Okay, good evening. So we have a little bit of an unusual start in that Ms. Varghese was unable to attend tonight. She unfortunately had a death in her family that she needed to attend to. Because of that, to go with Robert's Rules of Order, what we actually need to do is have a board member amongst the board members who are here. We need a motion for someone to be the board member of record to preside over the meeting today. Mr. Usami is ready, willing, and able to actually walk us through all of the various motions, but we do need someone on the record to preside. I asked what is the most common practice when a situation like this arises, and was told that typically what will happen is the board member with the longest tenure would typically be kind of considered to be the, quote, presiding officer for the meeting. Mr. Stankus, I think that falls to you. If you're willing and your fellow board members would like to nominate you, we would just need a motion to nominate Jim as presiding officer for tonight's meeting, and then a second, and then a vote. And if somebody else would like to nominate someone else, that's certainly acceptable as well.
So moved.
Second.
Do you want to call a vote?
Ms. Calderon?
Here.
No, do you, is it an affirmative vote?
Yes.
Mrs. Huang?
Yes.
Ms. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Luisi?
A resounding yes.
A lot of support here. Mrs. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Stankus?
Well, okay. Yes.
Mr. Weaver?
Okay, excellent. So, Mr. Stankus, if you can gavel us in.
Okay. So, what, just?
Just, the meeting has started.
Okay. The meeting of the Pascack Valley Regional High School District Board of Education has begun.
Thank you. And then, Mr. Usami, you can take it from there.
Sure. I'll do roll call. Mrs. Varghese is absent. Ms. Calderon?
Here.
Mrs. Huang?
Here.
Ms. Keller?
Here.
Mr. Luisi?
Here.
Mrs. Martin?
Here.
Mr. Stankus?
Here.
Ms. Steffens? Mr. Weaver?
Here.
Okay. Flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by mailing copies of said notice to the record, filing copies of said notice with the municipal clerks of Hillsdale, Montvale, Rivervale, and Woodcliff Lake, and publishing said notice in the record on July 21st, 2023. I just want to make an announcement. We're going to do an oath of office. However, Katie Keller here was sworn in officially on June 3rd at central office. We will do this again. This will give a opportunity to be streamed, as well as having your family here to hopefully take some photos. Okay, so if you step up to the podium.
I, Katie Keller, do solemnly affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same and to the governments established in the United States and in this state under the authority of the people. I, Katie Keller, do solemnly affirm that I possess the qualifications prescribed by law for the office of member of a Board of Education,
And that I am not disqualified as a voter pursuant to RS 19:4-1.
and that I am not disqualified as a voter pursuant to RS 19:4-1,
Nor disqualified due to conviction of a crime or offense listed in NJS 18A:12-1.
nor disqualified due to the conviction of a crime or offense listed in NJS 18A:12-1,
and that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform all the duties of that office according to the best of my ability.
and that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform all of the duties of that office according to the best of my ability.
Okay, congratulations again.
She's antsy. Very excited. We're all very excited. Thank you.
Yes, yes, yes. Oh, yeah, you can.
That way they can she won't last.
Forgot about the photos.
They left.
Oh, no.
Do you wanna stand at the
go to the podium?
Do you want Yas up there with you? As the oath giver? Do you want me to take it with your phone? Do you guys wanna get in? Congratulations, Katie.
On the agenda, we were having nomination, election of vice president. However, since President Varghese is not here, we will have that done at the next meeting.
So that's tabled to the next meeting.
Correct. We have the minutes of May 20th, regular meeting, and the executive meeting on May 20th. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Ms. Calderon?
Yes.
Mrs. Huang?
Abstain?
Ms. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Luisi?
Yes for the regular, abstain for the executive.
Mrs. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Stankus?
Yes.
Mr. Weaver?
Yes.
Right. Next, we have a resolution of appreciation for Joseph Blundo.
Let's call him
Former
up and have him
Blood
Yeah.
sit up here. Mr. Blundo, why don't you come sit up here while we do that?
One last time.
You're gonna see me, pretend like I'm not.
Okay, whereas Mr. Joseph Blundo was elected to serve as Rivervale representative to Pascack Valley Regional High School District Board of Education starting December 2014 and did serve until April 2024. And whereas Mr. Blundo did faithfully attend and actively participated at the executive and public meetings of the Pascack Valley Regional High School District Board of Education during that period of time. And whereas Mr. Blundo did serve as board president starting January 2022 and did serve until December 2023. And whereas Mr. Blundo did serve as board vice president in 2021 and did serve again in 2024. And whereas Mr. Blundo did serve as chairperson of the Pascack Valley Regional High School District Communications, Facilities, Negotiations, Policy, and Post-Secondary Planning Committees. And whereas Mr. Blundo did serve as a committee member of the Pascack Valley Regional High School District Finance, Governance, Guidance, and Student Alliance Committees. And whereas Mr. Blundo did serve as a liaison for Pascack Valley Regional High School District with the Pascack Valley High School PTO, PFO, and NJSBA. And whereas Mr. Blundo, during his time on the board, focused on facilitating discussions, building consensus, and making decisions that were in the best interest of the students and the community. Whereas Mr. Blundo always put students first in all decisions and in all conversations. And whereas Mr. Blundo led the board with professionalism and fairness with a focus on Pascack Valley Regional High School District's strong vision for success, including ensuring student focus was on innovation, individuality, and inquiry. And whereas Mr. Blundo supported staff, students, and the community in his actions to move our entire school community forward in the right direction. And now, therefore, be it resolved that the Pascack Valley Regional High School District Board of Education does express its sincere appreciation to Mr. Blundo on behalf of all of the superintendent, board members, students, and citizens of our 4 sending districts for his efforts and his beliefs. And be it further resolved that the Pascack Valley Regional High School District Board of Education members individually and jointly thank Mr. Joseph Blundo for his contributions and camaraderie over this timeline and wish him well in his other endeavors. And be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution recognizing Mr. Joseph Blundo be spread upon the minutes of the Pascack Valley Regional High School District Board of Education.
I have a couple of words as well, Joe. So, Joe, it's been an incredible journey having you on our Board of Education for the past decade. From your early days as Rivervale's representative to your leadership roles as board president and vice president, you've consistently shown up and you've really made a difference and a lasting impact on our school and on our community. You were the stability that we needed in trying times, and we thank you for being our rock. Your dedication to our students has been evident in every decision you've made and every conversation you've had. You've led with professionalism, fairness, and an unwavering commitment to our district's vision for success. Whether you are chairing committees, serving as a liaison, or building consensus among your fellow board members, you always put the best interests of the students first and our community first. On behalf of our entire administrative team, our teachers, our staff, our students, and the citizens of our 4 sending districts, we want to express our heartfelt appreciation for all that you've done. As you move on to other endeavors, please know that you have our deepest gratitude and best wishes. Thank you for being an integral part of our school community and of our leadership team. Thank you, Joe. We have some stuff for you here. We've got, we have a plaque of appreciation that we'll present to you, and we'll take a picture, if you don't mind. We have your yearbook. School's yearbook is coming. And then we also have the resolution framed for you. Definitely. Thank you, Joe.
I'd like to say a few words.
Please.
Joe, we've worked together for many years. I've never seen anyone so dedicated to the community as you. Whether it was town council, mayor, board of ed, just a terrific, positive influence for the district, for the community. I thank you for your advice to me as a board member, and I thank you for just keeping it all together and moving everything forward in a positive way. Definitely a terrific guy. I'm going to miss you.
I would like to add to that as well. For somebody who came on after a lot of trauma was happening within our district, I felt that you helped me adjust, and your decade of experience really helped the new board members, and I appreciate all of your guidance and listening, and even if you didn't necessarily agree, You're always fair, and I do agree that you always put students and the community first, and I appreciate all of your time, and we're going to miss you very much.
Joe, I'm really mad at you. No. It was such a pleasure, really, that working with you over the last, two plus years. So really, really, really professional all the way, very fair. Just a pleasure to work with, really. Wish you the best.
Joe, I just want to echo those guys' sentiments too, but I also want to know, what haven't you done?
Spent time with my kid. No, that's no, I did. I was able to do that.
Okay. Well, really, it was a pleasure serving with you, even though it was a short period of time. Your wealth and wisdom definitely made an impact on me, so thank you.
I guess I'll end it. Just for me, it's thanks, Joe, because not knowing what I was getting into when I got here, you definitely helped lead the way for me, and definitely an inspiration. So we're gonna miss you. I echo what Jim said. You were a great member, Board of Ed member, great mayor, better person. So thank you.
And I have to thank Joe too. This short amount of time we've been together, I appreciate your balance and your diligence in leading me into my new position. Thank you.
Do you want to do the roll call, Mr. Usami, for that motion? And then I'm thinking maybe if you guys don't mind, we could just get a group picture and we'll have Joe in the middle.
Sure. Take a motion.
Second.
Giving people some ideas here. Ms. Calderon,
Yes.
Mrs. Swan,
Yes.
Ms. Keller,
Yes.
Mr. Luisi,
Yes.
Mrs. Martin,
Yes.
Mr. Stankus,
Yes.
Ms. Steffens,
Yes.
Mr. Weaver.
Yes.
Excellent. All right, let's go in front of the screen. Maybe, yeah, the plaque. Do you mind? Sort of spread out. Because Joe can stand back there.
Short guys in the middle.
Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. Got it.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Yes, yes. Thank you.
All right. It's been a window on our lives for kids growing up.
Here, you know what? Let me put this back.
I thank all of you guys. I didn't really want to make a big speech. You've heard enough of me for the last 10 years, but what you do is very important. And sometimes maybe in a moment of, I won't call it weakness, but in a moment of doubt, whatever, you might say, why am I doing this? And what you do is really, really important. We have something special here, and you're the shepherds of it, and you're the caretakers of it, and you do a great job. And Jeff Jasper, one time when I said something nice to him, he said, what makes Pascack special is the people that walk the halls, from the superintendent, the board office, the administrators, the Board of Education, the teachers, and the students. So just keep doing what you're doing. You're doing a great job. And I do.
Aw, thank you, Joe. And we do have some cupcakes to celebrate. Make sure that you guys grab some on your way out.
Next. Next, we have the resolution of appreciation for retiring staff. Resolved that the Pascack Valley Regional High School District Board of Education, at the recommendation of the superintendent, recognize the following staff in our district retiring during the 2023-2024 school year: Susan Balella, Barbara Borghi, Jane Comboy, Patricia Corkery, Martin Edelberg, Michelle Ozwowski Garcia, Christine Gorman, Eva Merck, Marnie Rosen, Christy Rossig, and Stephanie Tomaselli.
I've had the pleasure of attending a number of celebrations for some of our staff who are outgoing, and I can say I've been so moved to hear the stories from their colleagues, from students, about how each one of our retirees has touched the lives of our students, of our faculty, of our parents, of our community. Mr. Blendo is correct. We have something really special here, and while it's so sad to see really everyone on this list go, we wish them the best, and we're so happy for them. And we're so glad that they decided to, teach here with us and retire here from us. So we wish them the best and thank them for their years of service to our school community.
Next, we have a presentation. It's by the Departmental Metrics Data Review, Dr. Backenheimer, and the departmental supervisors.
So to introduce Dr. Backenheimer and his team, while you guys come up and get set up, I'll do a quick introduction here. So I want to introduce Dr. Backenheimer. Obviously, he and his team attend and present at a lot of board meetings. One of the things I wanted to point out is that his full title is actually Director of Curriculum, Instruction, and Assessment. Internally, we kind of refer to it as CIA. It's sort of our instructional team. It's important to note tonight because he's going to be leading our presentation on departmental metrics, and that's to say how our supervisors assess the learning that's occurring within each department. It's also important to note because as our CIA leader, he's overseeing and vetting all of the statements that you've heard and will hear about assessment practices within the district. I want to just make a note that he and his team have my full confidence in how our assessment practices are evaluated and analyzed. Tonight's presentation is not going to address our current instructional assessment practice with regard to midterms and finals. As you know, assessment has been an ongoing conversation over the last 2 years. We went from having a total impact of midterms and finals at about 20% of a total grade. Last year, we dropped that down to 15%. This year, we actually dropped that further, where almost every course is at 5% impact, with all but a handful of AP courses being no greater than 7.5%. And I say that because I know that as we close out the school year, there's been a lot of chatter among students and some faculty and some parents about what that impact of finals really is. So I wanted to just make sure that we clarify that, we've set our impact at about 5%. This is the lowest percentage average we've found so far throughout the state. We are still collecting data, but we've collected data from a number of districts throughout our region, other regional high school districts. We know that other districts, such as Ridgewood, weight their midterms and finals at about 20%, which is what we used to do. We've changed from that practice. Bergen Academies administers mid-year and end-of-the-year cumulative assessments that are weighting the same as their unit tests, which is about as close to our weights as we have found. One other school, Northern Valley, who we are often compared to, they've implemented a version of quarterly assessments that are given in place of midterms and finals, but most of the other schools that we have looked at have actually gone to a strategy of re-implementing those traditional cumulative assessments. We've gone to great lengths to try to meet the needs of our students by finding a balance within our assessment strategy and our assessment plan. This has led to much variation in both the assessment weight and the assessment schedule over the past 5 or 6 years. We've enlisted our supervisors of instruction to work with us to again evaluate and analyze the data from this year's administration of midterms and finals. We're going to again run numbers to determine the overall impact of these assessments on a student's final score and final grade. Our preliminary data from running this data after midterms found that 92% of student grades were unchanged or went up as a result of the midterm. That's aligned with the data that we see from the impact of other larger unit assessments. We're going to continue from basically, school year ended last week. Our finals concluded last week, so we've started collecting the data. We're going to continue to collect internal data as well as look at external data. This includes a survey of all regional high schools throughout our region and throughout the state as to the status of their assessment schedule. We want to know, did they make any changes since we reached out to them last year, either to the weight or the frequency of their cumulative assessments. We also, Dr. Backenheimer is conducting a survey of our top 15 enrolled colleges. That is to say, the 15 most popular colleges that our students attend. We reach out to them to ascertain their assessment practices. This is something that Dr. Backenheimer does every year. He started when we first started talking about midterms back in 2015. We also are going to look at an analysis of feedback from staff and students on the assessment schedule itself. We have lingering questions, such as, are parents actively engaging with Canvas to read and review each syllabus with their child? Do they know how to log on? Do they know where to look? Are teachers providing sufficient study skills or study guides in preparation for these cumulative assessments? Are enough teachers assigned to our learning labs to properly serve all students that have questions? Are study guides accurate reflections of the material tested? Are our AP scores being predicted by other cumulative assessments given in our AP courses? Are weights for midterms and finals appropriate? Are they in line with what other school districts of our caliber are doing? Are our student GPAs aligned with the surrounding high-performing districts? This is a big question that has come up and something that we've added to our evaluation list. We're also looking, are teachers given ample time to provide feedback to students and to address any concerns about the content learned and the content that was mastered? These questions are going to continue to drive our analysis of our assessment schedule and our assessment practices. We're going to be reporting back to our curriculum committee before presenting an analysis of our assessment findings to the full board. I want to make that clear because I don't want to confuse the two questions at hand. The conversation that we're having right now through this presentation is about our departmental metrics. The conversation about midterms and finals is something that we're continuously analyzing. We're currently culling the information that I just talked about. We're going to analyze that and go have that be a presentation first to our board curriculum committee, and then we'll proceed with a presentation to our full board. I wanted our board and the public to understand the difference between the two and our schedule for evaluating that and rolling that out. So with that said, tonight I turn it over to Dr. Backenheimer, and I thank him for his continued work in this area. And I thank you for allowing me to give some context to this. And I want to thank you in advance for giving some additional information to our board and the public about our teacher evaluation system and helping to allow us to better understand how we answer that question. Are our students learning what we want them to learn? So Dr. Backenheimer, thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ms. Bellotti, and thank you, members of the board, members of the public, for having us here this evening. Purpose of our presentation, again, is to share how we evaluate our programs and our staff. And so tonight I'm joined by several of our supervisors. Two of our supervisors, unfortunately, suddenly could not make this evening, so I'll be filling in for their parts. Everyone else will be sharing briefly what's going on in their departments and the ways they evaluate. But to begin, I wanted to talk about the way we evaluate our teachers, as I know this has been a question perhaps and a chance to educate perhaps some of our new board members on the process that we use. So back in 2013, so it seems like such a long time ago, the state had us change over to all districts in the state use the EE4NJ, standing for Excellent Educators for New Jersey Teacher Evaluation System. In short, this required that every school district in the state had to come up with a system by which all teachers were rated with a numerical score and a rating of highly effective, effective, partially effective, or ineffective. And the state forwarded 4 models that you could choose from. However, they said if there were other models that if a state put a waiver in for, they could use. Now, looking at the 4 models at the time, 11 years ago, our district took a look at this and said, we really didn't like the approach of the 4 models that were there. And collectively, the administrative team at the time took a look at it and said, we wanted to go with a model that was much more coaching approached as opposed to finding fault. Knowing the outstanding staff that we have working with us, we felt this was a nice match for what we did. So we went with what's called the Kim Marshall system. Kim Marshall, if you've never heard of him, is a retired principal from the Boston area who put together a model of mini observations by which instead of, back when I was a teacher in the classroom, I would have principals come in and watch me for a full 45-minute 10-minute period a couple times a year. Instead, this is multiple visits at shorter intervals. So instead of 2 visits, say at 45 minutes, instead now you would have, if you're a non-tenured teacher, 9 classroom visits at 15 or 20 minutes a pop, almost seeing a teacher every month. And if you're a tenured teacher, a few less than that, typically around 5 or 6 visits. And so the idea is that through mini observations and this coaching model, we're able to effectively see what's going on in classrooms more frequently, evaluate, have collaborative conversations, make corrections as necessary, praise, and really get a true understanding of what's going on in the classrooms. They are unannounced, so they don't know when we're coming. And then as part of this, we very after each one of these observations have a mini post-observation where supervisors will sit down with their teachers and or counselors, child study team members, et cetera, and talk about goals of the lessons, outcomes, what did you do yesterday, what are you doing tomorrow, what are you doing next week, how does this fit into our curriculum, pieces like that. And then midway through the year, there's a mid-year conference where they reflect on professional development and other goals. At the end of the year, there's an end-of-the-year conference where they sit down with the official rubric that are break down by several different areas and score the teacher in 1 through 4, 4 being highly effective, 3 being effective, et cetera. I'm pleased to share that certainly since we've been implementing the system, with very, very few exceptions, our teachers consistently are rated as effective or highly effective. And this isn't an inflation thing. This is just truly based upon their talents in the classroom and the work that they do, based upon several different areas, including planning and preparation, including implementation, including assessment, including professional responsibilities, things along those lines. This model was so effective and interesting that, at least in the Bergen County area, many high-performing districts joined us in utilizing Marshall, including Northern Valley and their sending districts, Waldwick, Northern Highlands and their sending districts. Several other districts in the area went along with it, so much so that for many years we have what we call the Marshall Summit, no connection to social studies for those of you who have a history background, where we would talk about kind of implementing of this all together. But the ultimate goal with all of it is that, as certainly I believe our teachers would say if you ask them, it's a high level of trust between the administrators and the teachers they're observing. It's collaborative, not adversarial. And the idea is that everyone sees it as a way to get better and make our system and district get better and not as a gotcha system. So collectively, that's how we evaluate our teachers, and those ratings are uploaded as part of the state requirements every year in June. Moving on to how we evaluate each of our departments. So we'll start with English Language Arts. Unfortunately, Mrs. Matisich could not be here this evening, but to briefly speak for her, they evaluate students with several initiatives over the last couple years in both reading and writing. We utilize a program called Common Lit, where students will have reading and writing assessments. The 2 charts that you're looking at here, the top one just is a reflection of our 10th graders. Specifically, if you're taking a look at this, there's a pre-assessment scaled score, a mid-year assessment score, and a post-assessment scaled score. These are not graded. Students take them to really just assess where they are at in terms of their ELA skills. And as you can see across the board, there is a rise as students move through the year, and obviously as they learn more pieces. And you really use this data very heavily to prepare students for NJSLA, NJGPA, SATs, other things that students are assessed on, as well as their curriculum. The chart you see here at the bottom is what every teacher is able to see on a regular basis with what they're doing with their students' evaluation, so they're able to make adjustments for their classroom. So they can see how they're doing in each of their classes, moving averages, how certain classes are doing compared to other classes, areas that might require attention, and it also flags certain areas within the curriculum, such as reading for a main idea, evidence and support, things along those lines. So our English department has been using this format for the last several years and has been having great success with it, as evidenced certainly by our continual rise in scores over the past couple years on other standardized test measures. I'm now going to turn this over to Mrs. Graziano to talk about science.
Thank you, Dr. Backenheimer. Good evening, everyone. My name is Megan Graziano, and I'm the Supervisor of Instruction for Science and Technology Education. And I'm here to talk to you about our metrics that we've been using. This year, for the first time ever, we have been utilizing the Linkit Science Benchmarks. This is actually the first year that this metrics and this product was actually available through Linkit. What this allows us to do is provide a common benchmark assessment to biology, chemistry, and physics students in every single class at all various levels of those courses with a common assessment, which is tied directly to the 3 dimensions of science assessment. which is the three dimensions, of science learning are going to be the science and engineering practices, the cross-cutting concepts, and then the specific strands and topics that we learn within. So as you can see, it does produce a large amount of various types of data, and I just wanted to give you a snapshot of some of the ways we're able to actually look at growth. So that top chart on the right there was the results of our initial chemistry benchmark, where what we're looking at there is the measurement and achievement of each of these science and engineering practices. So during one of our initial department meetings, we took a look at this data, and our teachers within each subject area really honed in on specific skills that they wanted to focus their instruction on. They are constantly working all of these into their instruction, but they really pinpointed areas in need of maybe a little bit more focus, right, in need of a little bit more growth. And that's where we focused our discussions throughout the year. We're able to look at the totality of the results. So you can see here the difference between benchmark A and benchmark B in biology overall throughout the district. And we're also able to look at the results overall in the difference of growth. For instance, if you look up top there where it says the SEP, that's the science and engineering practice of analyzing and interpreting data, we saw growth from 49% to 89% achievement with that specific skill between Form A and Form B on the physics linkit. And so this data really helps lead a lot of meaningful discussions, but because it is a new product, we are still actually giving feedback to Linkit to talk about ways that we can continue to improve our use of it in the classroom, and as well as like the product itself, and that's actually been really meaningful and wonderful. And because this is a new tool, I also think it's important to look at other metrics. And earlier in the year, we reported on the raw data, right, that we received for NJSLA assessments. This down here is actually our comparative data compared to where we stand within the state. So as you can see, there's a lot of green boxes there because comparatively, although the raw data may indicate the lower scores, realistically, comparative to the state, we're actually scoring very, very well. It's a very challenging assessment across the state. So overall, we're actually scoring better than 88% of the state overall. We do want to continue to climb there, obviously, and that's our goal always. But I especially want to point out the success that we've seen in the improvement of our special education success on this test, where they actually finished in the top 90% this past year. And so I'm looking forward to getting the updated comparative scores for this year's tests as well. And we're going to continue to utilize these benchmarks as well as others and track the growth of our science students moving forward. Thank you.
Okay. Mrs. Safari unfortunately couldn't be here this evening. She's our acting supervisor of world language. So what you're seeing here are the metrics that are utilized for world language. Now, as you know, if you've either personally studied world language or if a child has studied world language, our goal is not to conjugate verbs. Our goal is to have students be active communicators in the language, both in speaking, reading, and writing. And that's really linked back to the way that we assess our students with that using something called an IPA. No, this is not a Sam Adams drink. This stands for Integrated Performance Assessments. Really, that's conducted at the end of each unit that we put together at least 4 times a year. They're skill and goal-based, and they analyze the student work samples as a department collectively during their department meeting and professional development times. And they use the same approach for 8th grade placement as well, collaboratively looking at the communication skills for students. The rubrics that they use align with the latest ACTFL standards for world language guidance. And just to give you a sense of what this means, so on June 13th, they tested all the juniors to get a sense of where they were with the stamp data for Spanish language tests. So Spanish is our most popular language that students take. Students as a median score scored between 4.96 and 6.97. What does that mean? Anything 5 or above qualifies you for the seal of biliteracy. We continue to have large numbers of students acquiring the seal of biliteracy standard. That number started when we first started doing this about 8 years ago. We had about a dozen kids do it. We are into a couple hundred by the end of the year, and we'll present those finite numbers to you when we do our annual score reports for you in August. But we remain very proud of our world language results as they go through, and they're continuing to look at future direction of looking at student data and continue to develop student portfolios as an additional way of measuring their growth in world language. Now I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Russo to talk about mathematics.
Thank you so much. For mathematics, we administer 3 benchmark assessments, one in September, one in January or February, and one in May or June, with the goal of determining students' relative strengths and weaknesses in key course standards and adjusting our instruction accordingly. We're able to see how individual students perform on these key standards, and as you can see in the two charts on the left, we're also able to identify how students are doing in aggregate for each benchmark administration. We then take these data, and based on standards' relative importance in each course and their prevalence on state assessments, we identify areas of focus. In the chart on the right, you will see this year's initial analysis of students' performance in geometry, which is extra importance in our first year implementing geometry first for a portion of our students. While these data represent to the performance of all students in geometry, I'd like to note that some of these data are incomplete, and further, that these data refer to all of our geometry courses, including the courses that remain the same for students who already took Algebra 1 in middle school. In order to get a more targeted understanding, I'm in the early stages of analyzing the performance for students just in our new Geometry First courses. I don't want to place too much emphasis on a single year's worth of data, and we will be on the lookout for trends over time. But when comparing this year's group to the comparable group of freshmen last year who took Algebra 1, data from our first year is encouraging. Students' average growth from Form A to Form C this year surpassed students' average growth in 22-23 by approximately 3 percentage points. We still have work to do, of course, but our intention is to maintain and build on this growth as we continue working to improve. Moving forward, we'll once again identify areas of focus based on students' benchmark results and consider these areas in summer curriculum writing, department meetings, and instructional decisions throughout the year. Each of these standards tells a different story, and we want to make sure we consider initial instruction, spiraling and retention of topics taught earlier in the year, and opportunities to make connections and synthesize big ideas later in the year. We're especially focused on geometry right now with our Geometry First initiative, but we'll expand that focus to Algebra 1 and Algebra 2 as we move forward and look to additional data collection, including student interest, as we hope to provide multiple desirable pathways for students as they progress in our upper-level mathematics electives. Thank you again for your time, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Orlak and our Social Studies Department.
Thank you. Thanks for having me speak about our program. The initiative that we undertake, thank you, Barry, is to strengthen critical thinking skills and historical analytical skills in our students. We look at this as a mandate not only for our students to learn history, but to help them to become productive and informed citizens in the future. So to that end, we focus on 6 historical thinking concepts. This is the basis of our curriculum, 9 through 12, and has begun to leach down into the sending districts as well. And that's establishing historical significance, utilizing primary source evidence, identifying continuity and change, analyzing cause and consequence, taking historical perspectives, and understanding the ethical dimensions of historical interpretations. So to ensure that we are hitting on those 6 skills, we established the Social Studies Department Assessment Metrics Plan, organized by content area. This is World History, US 1, US 2, not our electives, just our core courses. Organized by content area, academic level across the district, and defined by 3 key documents chosen from we call it effectively SHEG, Stanford History Education Group, which offers 140 Library of Congress documents and questions that are connected to those documents. So teachers met, worked on choosing the particular documents, and in October, February, and May gave assessments based on those particular documents. We established proficiency scales, highly proficient, partial proficient, and proficient, not in that order. And this helped us, most importantly, to adjust our teaching of those skills throughout the year. And it should be noted that these are low risk, meaning not graded assessments. These are either do nows, these are either integrated within the class, or exit tickets. And we utilize this, and we thank the students for allowing us to use them to help us become better teachers on this side. So there's an example here for our US 1 honors group, and we see overall with our findings significant increases in student proficiency over time. This is the second year we've used this as a metrics plan, but we've been doing this for a number of years. Our most notable success is in our current ninth grade students. 2 years ago, we started sharing this information with our sending districts, with the feeder schools, all 4 of them. And they have taken it to heart and have started to look at the different primary sources that are utilized and how to interpret those primary sources. So through the Regional Curriculum Office, Specifically this year, Pascack Hills really knocked it out of the water. Valley was doing well all along. We're going to continue to have that articulation when it comes to those sending districts as they come to the high school. One of the issues that we have for improvement, which is a focus for next year, is a difficulty for students comprehending era-specific language. I had the opportunity to collaborate with the Department of Education as a author of the Disciplinary Literacy Project, creating models for high schools to help students implement teachers to implement targeted strategies to improve accessibility and content-specific support for language when it comes to social studies. We want everyone to speak social studies, and that's the real goal of this. So we're going to continue. I'll be introducing that to the department come when it's official, which will be in a couple of months. But come September, we'll have that in place to allow our students to continue to speak the language of social studies. We're also going to continue that regional curriculum office integration. With this year, we had teachers from the 8th grade spend time with our 9th grade teachers. Even though it's 4 different districts, it's wonderful to see the teachers come up here, and it's almost like a family reunion when they're seeing the kids, oh yeah, Mrs. Whatever. So it gives opportunity for that connection to continue. So again, we're really happy with the benchmark process within social studies, and for next year, we're looking to pivot to a program called a DBQ project, which is a little higher, it's more of a higher level than the SHEG documents. And you know, for those who are aware of this, this could give us even more data and really drive our success forward. But again, we really want our students to do well in social studies, but we want them to be good, productive citizens. That's our #1 goal. Thank you.
So just to conclude, this came about the year after the pandemic. If those of you who were on the board remember, the question was raised, how do we know how we're doing, especially post-pandemic? How do we know how well students are achieving, how well teachers are reaching their curriculum goals? So each department supervisor was empowered to look for a research-supported way to really answer that question. And I have to commend our supervisors who were here, and even the 2 that are not, for really, really rising to the challenge. Certainly, we've adjusted a little bit over the past couple of years. Bringing in LinkedIn certainly has been an asset to us that we continue to develop. But certainly, the goal behind all of this is, in addition to all the standardized tests that we use, what are our internal metrics we continue to look at to know how we're doing? Again, not so much are the students achieving, but are the teachers teaching, students learning, objectives moving as we move through. Any questions from the board for myself or the supervisors?
I wanted to thank all of you for the very detailed presentations. I especially want to thank you for the articulation work that's being done with the middle schools. I think that's helping prepare our students. The concern I continue to have, and I know I've voiced this in the past, is in the area of the math, with the geometry going first. And I do see, again, as you obviously addressed, that the growth is very small in that area. And I'm wondering if those kids do not have the algebra background that they require, even in the state testing. So that's something I'd like to keep an eye on and see, are we doing articulation moving backwards, and are we preparing the kids with at least the algebra that they need to be successful in those geometry assessments?
Absolutely, and as Dr. Russo shared, that's absolutely part of it. Every program we start, we have a pretty thorough evaluation system, and we'll be keeping a very close eye on that and making adjustments as we need to, if we need to.
Great, okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Thank you all for your interest and your time. We appreciate it.
Next, we have a presentation, referendum planning, architect Michael Beery of FKA.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Mike Beery with the firm FKA Architects. And so tonight, I'm here to just talk to you about a facility analysis and referendum process. So I have a presentation that's just going to go over the process of performing a facility analysis and also planning a referendum, or we kind of call pre-referendum planning, because you're planning to the vote of the referendum. I'm going to show a timeline of what would be required for the pre-referendum planning, and then finally some examples of what you might expect to see in a facility analysis that we've done for some local neighboring districts. So the facility analysis process is 6 parts, and I'll walk you through each one. The first is to identify district space needs. What are the existing deficiencies that we need to solve for in each of your schools? What kind of desired programs might you have that you want to implement that you can't currently implement? What are the enrollment implications, especially from developments in the 4 towns? And then finally, is there a curriculum that you'd like to offer but maybe don't have the space or the right equipment or the right facility to offer? So it looks at all of those things, and we start this by doing a walkthrough of the buildings, looking at each space to look at the configuration and how it's organized within the buildings with a set of floor plans. We would interview the various departments in the schools. That would also not just be academics, but it would also be athletics, facilities on the site and in the school also. From there, we'd identify any spaces that need to be either expanded or maybe can be consolidated. So when this comes together, we have this background information. We then begin to prepare a plan for how the space might be best utilized. This plan would have options for each one, for each solution. May mean certain departments expand, maybe certain departments contract, depending on the needs of the departments. And then each of those options would have a cost associated with it. We utilize a software estimating program called RS Means, which is a software that contractors will use to estimate their construction costs. So we're on the same line, and we're able to project out costs with this software for years in the future, because when we're planning a referendum, these take years to plan. So we have to make sure we have the right costs up front. So when you go to build it years from now, you have the right dollar amounts. So that's sort of the background gathering of information, identifying what the needs are, and then putting a cost on each of the needs. So this winds up to be a big list, which I'll show you an example of in a minute. So usually what happens in a referendum planning is there's a dollar number that the community would bear. So the next step would be to prioritize and reconcile the needs and the cost to fit within whatever dollar amount the community would bear. I'll show you an example of that. And of course, the final step is to implement it. And in this case, I'm going to show you a roadmap, which I have a handout for. Let me give you some on this side. Okay, so this roadmap that you're seeing is this document here. This has 4 phases to it, and I like to begin to discuss this with the end instead of the beginning. So the end, and the reason for that is because what this is showing is a potential vote date of December of 2027. The reason that that's there is because that's when the district's current debt expires, replacing one debt with another. So the idea of this chart shows you the processes that are necessary to implement a referendum. Starting with the end and working backwards, if we're looking at December of 2027, the Department of Education requires we submit plans an application to the department for approval for a referendum 6 months, at least 6 months prior to whatever referendum date you choose. So in order to make that submission, we need to prepare a submission, so that backs you up another few months where we're looking at having an idea of what's in the referendum by the beginning of 2027. So then bringing it back to the beginning, investigating the needs, what I had mentioned in the facility analysis happens first. That first sort of block of tasks here is all figuring out what the needs are and then estimating what the costs are for those needs. So once that's all put together, then becomes the prioritization process. What's most important to the district and which projects should be at the top to be addressed first. And then the second bar, this bar here, is refining the plan. So the first part happens 2024, 2025, and then we're into the end of 25 and 26 to review the plan, refine the plan, prioritize the plan, update the costs, begin some public outreach, get community feedback with surveys, building tours, and those kinds of things to understand what the needs are, what the community feels the needs are, so that they can be coordinated what the board feels the needs are. So that's the kind of outline of roadmap. Is there any questions before I move forward with that? No. Okay. So I thought I'd show a couple of examples of what all of that I just said looks like. So the first example I'm going to show you is for Montvale. We worked with Montvale in their recent referendum, and this is a planning document that we used with them. This is one of the progress documents. So their priorities in their schools were both spatial and physical. So we had a lot of renovation projects and we had some space projects that they wanted to solve for. So what we did is the analysis. We walked through their buildings, interviewed the staff, the administration, the board to determine what items needed to be on a master facility list. So this is one of the versions of their master facility list. And what we did here is prioritize what they thought some of the more important things were in their list, and you can see the different categories that they had, and then projects assigned to them. So the idea of this list is that it's almost like a menu. You see each project, and then what's in the blank column here, we would ultimately estimate out a cost and fill it in there so you can make an informed decision. What are you getting for your money, and what is the most important thing? So not every project fits into a referendum. So in the case of Montvale, we had a lot of projects that didn't make the cut, and these projects become future capital improvement projects or potentially projects that can be done by either staff or just hiring a contractor. And one important item to note about referendum versus capital improvement projects is that with a referendum, you have the opportunity to get debt service aid with a referendum, meaning the state will contribute a percentage to your debt service, whereas you would not be able to get that with just doing a typical capital improvement project. That is one benefit of doing a referendum. So this was their actual plan. You can see the light blue colors are spaces that they wanted to renovate. And by doing the utilization and facility analysis, we were able to reconfigure some of the underutilized spaces in their building, take advantage of an overhang they had on a secondary entrance and close it, and recover 2 classrooms in a renovation instead of new construction, which is important because they were able to get debt service aid on that. So that's Montvale. Another neighboring district is Westwood. As you know, Westwood's a regional district. We looked at all 6 of their schools, including the high school, as we were hired in the beginning of our engagement with them back in 2006. We started with a facility analysis, which resulted in a first referendum with them, which primarily focused on space needs, but renovation needs, but had a facility plan of space needs they just couldn't afford at the time. So over the years, through capital projects and the planning of a second referendum, we had implemented many projects with the district. Some being expanding their locker rooms and athletic facilities, consolidating special education from a leased facility they had in township. And this actually was in the first referendum, is consolidating some of the science wing rooms, which were oversized, so we renovated them to pick up another couple of classrooms without building something new. So the Westwood project also looked at outside facilities needs too, which is what we would do here as well. Some of the things that were identified at Westwood were the need for all varsity sports to play at the high school. If you know Westwood, they played at the middle school, which was an elementary school at the time. So their desire was to bring everybody at the high school, which we did here in this, giving a field for each of the sports. They also identified field house and maintenance needs, which couldn't be implemented in either of the referendums due to cost concerns. So this wound up being a capital project. And the second referendum for Westwood was identified in the first facility analysis we did. However, there just wasn't enough funds to do it at the time. So a second referendum was implemented for Westwood to expand their middle school by 50,000 square feet, which in turn, in the orange spaces on here, gave them additional space at their high school to use for other programs that they desired to implement but just didn't have the space to do so. So those are just two examples of facility plans that we've done locally. What I'd like to just show you is a couple of things that you may be interested in using for a referendum. So this is a board that we prepared for Westwood. This is a board that has basically a snapshot of all of the referendum items within it. It might be hard to see the numbers and stuff like that, but the idea of this board was, because they're a regional district, this would be placed in all of the schools, libraries, town halls, and also used for presentation purposes. So anybody that comes into any of those facilities, maybe is not normally in a school, can easily see what is included in the referendum project itself. And that was coupled by what I'm going to hand out now. This is a handout which was put next to the board so that people had the right information, didn't have to go to a website to find it, but when they saw the board, they could bring it home with them. So we developed this handout with the district, which describes what the importance of what they were doing at the time, which was their main need to create a true middle school, 6 to 8 middle school. So this explains that, has the tax impact funding summary, and of course the plans of what's actually included within the project. So that was just kind of a quick overview of the facility analysis and referendum planning. I'd be happy to answer any questions if anybody has them. So there's advantageous times to sell the bonds and not, typically you'll want to sell them in coordination with when the construction is going to start, because that's the biggest expense, depending on what you do also. Usually we'll help your bond counsel or financial advisor do a drawdown plan, which would show how much money would be needed at what points of a project, so you have a strategic time when you sell your bonds. Obviously, it also has to do with the market for interest rates and all that, too. Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have comments from the public. Citizens are invited to make comments regarding agenda items and are limited to 3 minutes according to the Pascack Valley Regional High School District Board of Education Policy Number 0167. Persons wishing to speak must, upon being recognized, rise, sign in, and state their name, town of residence, and which agenda item they are referencing.
Hello, my name is Luke Dargan. I'm from Hillsdale. Some of you members may recognize me as I spoke at last week's commencement ceremony at Pascack Valley. In my speech as the executive president, I highlighted many positive aspects of Pascack Valley. As a new alumni, the thing I didn't mention in my speech, but value most about my experience, was the transparency and close relationship between students and teachers. Over the past year, I've become interested in the midterms and finals at Pascack Valley. I've taken a wide selection of rigorous courses and worked with many different teachers. After taking these exams at the 5 and 10 month mark of the year, I noticed my grades never reflected my previous performance in class or my level of understanding. As all of you know, recalling information from 5 and 10 months ago is extremely difficult without the proper preparation. After years of frustration, another student and myself began developing a public policy presentation on this topic to understand other students' opinions on these exams. As we began researching, we met with our director of curriculum, Dr. Barry Backenheimer. We presented our goals and opinions on the topic of midterms and finals. Throughout our conversation and us sharing stories, he pointed out that our data was purely anecdotal. Since our current data was not reliable enough, I thought, let's use the data the supervisors and Dr. Backenheimer were crunching all summer. So we requested data on the effects of midterms and finals to help understand the quantitative effects on student averages. As I stated before, transparency is key within education. In efforts to hide the negative effects on the students in Pascack Valley, Dr. Backenheimer refused to deliver this data. As I understand that as a student, seeing other students' information may be a breach of privacy, but I did suggest that important information would be covered or student ID numbers could be used. I'm extremely disappointed with the results of this project with Dr. Backenheimer due to his lack of transparency. Therefore, I conducted a survey with students of varying ages and course levels. After surveying students with over 150 students, 66.2% of student grades were decreased multiple points, and an additional 12.3% of student averages were left unchanged. Therefore, a whopping 78.5% of these students were not helped by these unnecessary exams. With a decrease in student averages, mental health, wellness is harmed as well as student confidence. With a dip in grades after these highly weighted exams, student GPAs do decrease too. This puts PV and PH students at a disadvantage to the students they are being compared to in the college admissions process. The students enrolled at the schools who do not administer these exams consequently have higher GPAs and will perform better in the college admissions process and earning merit money. The only thing that these exams are doing are hurting children, and although these exams have been typical among high schools years ago, times have changed. The education here is on the cutting edge, according to the supervisor's presentations at the April board meeting. I simply do not agree. These exams are outdated, and I expect us to continue to progress as a school. We need to be at the front line as a district and follow the lead of many other high schools like Northern Valley, Old Japan, Demarest, the Bergen Academies, Ramapo Indian Hills, Westwood, Bergen Tech, Cresskill, Tenafly, and many more. There's a reason why their districts are so highly ranked, and we need to follow suit and eliminate these exams immediately. Thank you for your time.
You guys can't keep calling yourself alumni, though, because it makes me want to cry.
Am I okay to start? Good evening, members of the board. My name is Samantha Forrest, and I'm here to speak on the topic of midterm and final exams at Pascack Valley, specifically pre-exam review and post-exam. Typically, the preparation for these exams consists of large packets that are intimidating to indulge in. As you're attempting to prepare for these exams that are on 5 to 10 months of material, students are still actively learning information that they will be assessed on eventually. Teachers will sometimes not administer these review packets until days before the exam, forcing students to conform to a cram study mentality. Specifically in the science department, in the past 2 years, I know on various course levels, students haven't received these review packets until days before the exams and were not provided with answers to help them engage in the review process, and instead had to lean on their peers in a negative way. Administrators in the math and science department have also claimed to have communicated with students on how to better improve pre and post-exam review. However, as one of the newest alumni, I've only spoken to one of the supervisors after the midterm exams this year and have yet to see any further improvement made during the final exam schedule this year. From speaking with several faculty members, myself and my partner Luke have gathered that these exams are administered to prepare students for higher education. Exposure to these large exams does not necessarily mean that students feel prepared to take these exams when moving on to a college classroom. We surveyed 163 sophomores, juniors, and seniors on how they felt regarding these exams. We felt that the freshmen hadn't yet been exposed to enough schedules and exam review packets in order to be a part of the survey. 82.2% of students said that these midterm and final exams are administered do not increase their long-term knowledge of material learned in the class. 74.8% of these students came to the consensus that teachers do not teach them studying techniques and strategies to succeed in these assessments. 78.8% of the students said that their teachers do not go back and review the material that they've performed poorly on the exam. The only way to learn from a mistake is through detail-oriented correction, not just an X or a check through a question mark that you got wrong. We commend and applaud the English and History department for providing us with a superfluous amount of written correction and one-on-one teacher-student time that go in depth on how to improve your performance. In math and science, it is rare that you see more than 2 words next to a problem or a free response question that is marked wrong. As a student who has utilized several outlets of extra help, these exams do nothing but diminish your hard work throughout a semester, and it's certainly an uphill battle that sometimes is not worth fighting. With the lack of preparation and lack of review, these teachers are not working towards the common goal of preparing us for college. Class averages and individual student grade point averages are being wrecked by these exams, and the purpose is not accomplishing what it is being set out to do, so why is valuable class time being wasted on administering and supposedly reviewing these strenuous tests? Following this meeting, Luke and I will be forwarding you our data collection as well as the statements we made today. Thank you for your time.
Michael Fox, Hillsdale. Definitely hard to follow up that act, for sure. That was very well done. Just to kind of go through, you have 3 alumni here in National Honor Society, and you, Ms. Bellotti, made the claim of 92% of students went up after midterms and finals, and we have 3 National Honor students sitting right here who never had their grade go up after a midterm and final in 4 years. I'll have to go back through the presentation that I shared the last time, that there are numerous classes that were 15%. You said 5, so it's 7.5 and 7.5 equals 15. Just to kind of take you through those, and I'll go through your information, because we've been talking about this since February of 2023, and I felt we were on the same page. So some of the information that you shared tonight, which you didn't share with me every time I ask, I'm a little taken back by, to be quite honest. Sitting here, I just want to bring up a few extra points. I have a lot to say. I'll share it with an email correspondence with the board. But this year alone, students missed 7 days of education, plus time spent on review for these exams. Every time I talk to students at PV or PH, they discuss the positive impact teachers have on them, and it's wonderful to hear. I mean, talking about social studies teachers and English teachers, who don't give those exams, and students just can't say enough about them and the impact they have. And I've shared it with Ms. Bellotti, and I've shared it with Dr. Backenheimer on the great work that's given feedback-wise in those content areas. They rarely, during the time I talk to students, make complaints about the school year, right? So if we're talking about math and science, they're really doing well in science through the year, and they do well in math during the year. It's these two large exams that elicit major negative comments and actually then negatively affects their grade. I haven't heard as much, and I've shared this with Ms. Bellotti and Dr. Backenheimer. In math, I really haven't heard too much, so I'm going to share a little bit of my thought there. Science is kind of a little bit different in the information that I've been receiving over time. So if the board would like to see my emails on the subject matter that I've been going through for the last 17 months with all of the administration here, you're more than welcome to access all the emails, or I can forward them to you, but they have access. They can share those emails with you. I always try to come up with solutions. I think one of the biggest things, I'm not here to always, be a complainer. I want solutions for children and what benefits children. And if I look at it, Ms. Bellotti mentioned nothing is more than 5% this year. I think you said 15, then you said 5. I'm confused by that. But if it is, last year was 15%, or last year was 20%, this year moved to 15? Okay, all right. So if it's only 5% this year, I think maintaining that in math, I can see that. Run the course in 2 class periods in the midterm and the final. This way, there's no disruption. You lost 7 school days plus review for children. They need student-teacher contact time. There's great value to that. There's tons of research on that, and I think it's greatly important. I really do believe, though, at this point in time, in looking at science results, the exams really, truly negatively impact. There was no data given tonight. I know you're continuing analyzing. 17 months of analyzing, in my opinion, is a long time. But utilizing unit tests for science, I think, has been a positive, and I think students have shown in science they're progressing well throughout the year with unit tests. If there's an option for AP, and you have an AP exam at the end, and you have your science group, I don't think it's a bad option to offer a midterm for the AP students to prepare them for the end of the year AP final. So once again, I'm asking Ms. Bellotti to make a change, for the benefit of the students. And it's not a major change. You're talking about, kind of minor shift. You mentioned Northern Valley and quarterlies. I think quarterlies have great value. We've had this conversation for 17 months. The reason quarterlies have great value is we can actually take that data and the assessment and utilize it for teaching and learning. I don't know what a 10-month test, because I haven't found a college that gives one yet. I haven't found the point of the 10-month test and the students leave for the summer. There was a feedback day this year. There was, honestly, to the credit of teachers, it's impossible to review in a shortened period of time. And from my understanding and asking around, there really was no feedback. You're just taking a 10-month test and going off to the summer. We got to look for the value for the children. There, to me, is no value. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
I'm just going to respond if that's.
Hello, my name is Michelle Farrar. I'm the parent of a pair of rising juniors at Pascack Hills. I wanted to speak about the current proposal to merge the Hills and Valley Theater programs due to the auditorium construction and sudden resignation of Allison Andrini, the Hills Theater director. While we appreciate the school's willingness to have a plan that will allow the program to continue, the solution is problematic. The current solution would have rehearsals from 4 to 6 and most weekends, rather than 6 to 9 that has been the rehearsal schedule for years. This new schedule would make it impossible to do sports and many other activities alongside the theater program. The wonderful thing about the Hills Theater program is that it includes a very diverse group of students. My son Jake, who unfortunately cannot be here today, has been acting in shows since he was 5 and loves the Hills Theater program. He is also a cross-country runner and varsity track athlete. He usually has track until 5, has a quick bite and shower, and then goes back to school from 6 to 9. While this might seem tiresome, he never complains because he loves them both equally, but will have to quit one if this is the solution. He is not the only one that will have to make this choice. The theater students and parents are a passionate and dedicated group, and I'm asking that students and parents are given more time and involvement to come up with a better solution so that we don't lose students' involvement in the theater program We also want to ensure that the hard work that these students have put in these past years will still result in the program opportunities that they have earned, whether it is stage crew or cast, that they might lose due to an overcrowded program. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I know this isn't a time to go back and forth with the public, but is it an opportunity for us to have any conversation on any topic specific to what was discussed amongst the board? Or do we have to save those for the end for old or new business? Okay.
So I do want to respond. Theater, I just want you to know that we have heard you. I know that after the initial parent meeting, there have been a lot of conversations between the two principals and between the Lupfers and the principals. And I believe that they're working on a response to the concerns that you brought up. There were some other concerns that were brought up by other parents as well. My understanding is that they are planning to host at least immediately a second meeting in the coming weeks to further explore those concerns and talk about possible solutions. The unfortunate situation that we're in is that the Hills Auditorium is going to be under construction, which is going to necessitate a sharing space at Valley, and that we don't currently have a theater director at Hills. So even if we were to hire a theater director just to Hills, there's no guarantee that that director would have the same philosophy as our former director. So I think these are all things that kind of are fluid, that we're trying to figure out how to work to make this the best possible solution for our students. So I just want to be very clear that it's not a final decision. They're working on that. And that they're going to be reaching out to set up another meeting to have a better conversation about that. So thank you. I also want to thank the students and Mr. Fox for, speaking. Students, student voice is so important to us, and we always appreciate hearing directly from you. I appreciate your willingness to share that information with us. We'll certainly look at it and take it into consideration as we look at this and move it forward. One of the things that I said earlier is that, we've got a smart and well-connected administrative team, including Dr. Backenheimer, Dr. Russo, Ms. Graziano, along with talented teachers, and we're all committed to implementing an assessment plan that aligns both with student needs and research-based best practices. You heard that our supervisors are advisors to the DOE. They serve on committees to write state standards. We've had several supervisors actually writing the assessment questions for those state assessments that they referenced in their presentation earlier. And I say that because we're not taking this lightly, and we're not coming at this from a position of inexperience or lack of understanding. One of the other things that I brought up earlier is that we have lingering questions, and many of them are things that Mr. Fox, you just brought up. We've got questions about syllabus. We've got questions about providing sufficient study skills and study guides. We've got questions about is there enough time for the teaching and learning, and frankly, is there enough time for that feedback after an assessment? Because our goal is to make sure that our students leave as well prepared as possible. We want our students to enter college being the most prepared that they can be, and that includes truly understanding, and Ms. Forrest, you brought this up, that includes truly understanding the gaps and the strengths in their knowledge, especially when looking at a cumulative assessment. And so these are things that are on our radar. These are things that we do want to explore, and that we want to have answers for all of you for. The other question that has been raised that we are looking at very critically is the question about, are our student GPAs aligned with surrounding high-performing districts, or are our GPAs being negatively impacted by our assessment question? This question is something that Mr. Fox had brought up at the beginning of the year, and this is like an extremely pertinent question and something that we are absolutely looking at and running the data for. One thing that's a little bit difficult is that other schools are not always as willing to share that type of data with us, but there's other ways that we can at least get a sense as to whether or not we're being competitive. One thing that we have looked at is our own GPAs. Our GPAs have actually risen over the last 4 years on average, which gives us an indication that this is a trend that we're seeing statewide. So what we want to see is, are they rising in a similar pattern as the other surrounding high-performing schools, or are our kids somehow at a disadvantage? Because we understand the importance of this question. The other thing that I want to just point out is that we really want to make sure that when our students get to college, they're as prepared as possible. And that's either through direct instruction, through feedback and evaluation, and making sure that they do understand and obtain the study skills and executive functioning skills that are necessary to know how to study for those big tests. And, you know, I'm hearing from both of our students that, at least in some circumstances, they didn't feel that that study skill assessment quite prepared them for the final analysis. That's a piece of information that we're going to take under advisement and continue to look at. And if you, you know, both wouldn't mind sharing with us any specifics that you have as well, even if you want to give me a call and share that confidentially, you know, I would appreciate that feedback from you. I also want to just point out that this has been an ongoing conversation, and I interrupted Mr. Fox, and thank you for letting me interrupt you, because it is a little bit confusing, and it's something that has come up to question a lot. And so what I was trying to clarify is that we were at 20%, which is where most of the state is. Most of the state that's giving midterms and finals is giving it at 20% of the grade. We quickly realized that we did not want to do that. Last year, we switched it to 15%. This year, we switched it to 7.5 or 5. And the reason that this is a little bit confusing is that our AP courses are weighted a little bit higher because of the way that we evaluate and assess for our APs. So let's take AP out of the conversation for a second, because they're their own animal over here. The rest of the courses are almost all at 5%. There are a couple of high-level exceptions, specifically in math, that are at 7.5. But other than that, they are all at 5. We've looked at every single syllabus to ensure that teachers are adhering to that. I'm not sure how else to convey that information, but that is what they are in the overall grade book. I will say that a couple of people have brought to my attention some, you know, anomalies, so to speak, when we look at the grade books. It's usually in how the grades are applied on an ongoing basis as you move through the year, not the actual final number. So when you look in the final number of the grade book at the end of the year, the midterm and final assessment should not be more than 5% once all the grades are entered and all of the tests are weighted. And I think that this is something that is confusing to our students, because depending on how the teacher set up the grade book, it could actually look like, when you take a midterm, it could actually look like it's almost like 50% of your grade, depending on how your teacher set up the grade book. So this is, again, a question as to how can we clarify that so that students understand what we're talking about, because I think that's also important. And we understand that that could have some anxiety in terms of what that looks like. And you know, if you're looking at this and you think, oh my goodness, this test just was 50% of my grade, like, clearly that's not the message that we're trying to send. So I appreciate you guys bringing that up. I just want to, again, reiterate that this is something that we're looking at. We want to get our internal data, and we want to also look at state and national norms as they guide us as we make decisions for next year. So thank you all for sharing that. I appreciate you coming out to several meetings to talk about it, and I appreciate your tenacity with it, and also your passion for trying to do what's right for our students. And I appreciate our administrative team for, you know, continuing to look at this and really trying to figure out how do we balance this and provide the best possible program for our students. So thank you.
So I just want to go back. I mean, I think we just opened the door to be able to comment as a board on these topics since the superintendent addressed it. I know we're not typically ever going back and forth with the public, any of us, superintendent included, but I am going to offer my thoughts on this first with regard to performing arts. I have personally seen how when you change schedules, it can have a very negative impact on participation. So I definitely appreciate that. I've seen where, you know, we move morning rehearsals to after school, and wasn't good for the overall program. So I'm curious to hear what the administration has as solutions. I don't know if we've looked into renting space. I don't know if we've had communications with St. Joe's and when they run theirs, but as a board, I know I would be receptive to spending monies that were necessary in order to make sure the program can continue to be successful the way that it's been, but I'm just one person. With regard to finals, I just have to say I don't know what to believe. It's not clear to me what information is true, and I'm not saying you're lying, and I'm not saying anybody here is lying. It's just I'm confused. Like, I've asked my son in math, like, how much is your final, how much is the midterm and the final worth? He said to me, like, this was going back a couple weeks, 15% of the final grade. I mean, he's not good at math, which is why I've had to spend $3,000 on a tutor. That's not a reflection on his teacher. He's just not good at math, so maybe he doesn't know the difference between 5% and 15%. But, like, we've got different people throwing out different numbers, and it's not clear to me. Like, I don't know what's factually true and what's not, based on all the information that's coming at us. So if there's a way to present to the board factually what's actually in these course syllabus so that we can see it for ourselves, I appreciate you both coming tonight and sharing with us your experiences. It's very important for us to hear that. And I hope you continue to offer information in this fashion, or get your classmates to show up too, because it's important. You offer a perspective that we don't have. So thank you for that. That's all I've got.
No, I'm going to reserve my comments till old business, but just real quick, I'm on the curriculum committee. We'll definitely take a look at all the concerns. I mean, we are constantly moving the ball, so it's not a thing where people are digging in their heels or anything like that.
Okay, so we're on to our action items. So we go to policy, have consent agenda for items 1 to 3. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Ms. Calderon?
Yes.
Mrs. Huang?
Yes.
Ms. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Luisi?
Yes.
Mrs. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Stankus?
Yes.
Ms. Steffens?
Yes.
Mr. Weaver?
Yes to 1, abstain 2 and 3.
On to education, we have items 1 to 12, which also includes a supplemental. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Nope. Ms. Calderon?
Yes.
Mrs. Huang?
Yes.
Ms. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Luisi?
Yes.
Mrs. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Stankus?
Yes.
Ms. Steffens?
Yes.
Mr. Weaver?
Yes.
Okay, we have human resources, items 1 to 22. That includes a supplemental item. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Nope. Ms. Calderon?
Yes.
Mrs. Huang?
Yes.
Ms. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Luisi?
Yes.
Mrs. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Stankus?
Yes.
Ms. Steffens?
Yes.
Mr. Weaver?
Abstain 11, Pascack Hills, yes to everything else.
Abstain. Next, we have finance, consent agenda, items 1 to 45. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Ms. Calderon?
Yes.
Mrs. Huang?
Yes.
Ms. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Luisi?
Yes.
Mrs. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Stankus?
Yes.
Ms. Steffens?
Yes.
Mr. Weaver?
Yes.
Next, we have old business.
So I don't know if this is old business, but I had mentioned before about trade jobs. Does that come under old business? I guess it does, right? Yeah. So I had the pleasure of attending a seminar on May 30th that was hosted by Bergen County Workforce Development, and it was on exploring careers that build America construction and skilled trades. There were some students from Pascack Hills that attended and some from Valley. And it was a really good session. It lasted about 2 hours. We had representatives from Eastwick and Ramapo and Bergen Community College, and we had some local business people, male and females, who were in the construction business and were talking to parents and the students about careers. And it was very interesting. And the general consensus amongst parents and the students that attended was that any kind of trade job carries kind of like a stigma with it. And I find that unfortunate because not all students are going to go to college. And I think that we need to do a better job to support those children that may not be going to college and promote the trade jobs that are out there. They're looking for people. They're having a hard job hiring children out of school because they don't have any background, that they're not sure where to go. They're not sure where to go to get information about applying to maybe a trade school like Bergen Tech or something, Eastwick or Bergen Community College. So I had heard that we had a post-secondary committee at one point. I don't know if that's true or not, but if we did, I would definitely like to bring that back and have a committee so that we can kind of collectively talk about that and promote that and obviously work with the administration on that.
I think it's kind of been pulled into curriculum. I think that's what happened to it, because we did have one, and I think it just became so many different committees that they started consolidating, and that actually became part of the curriculum, if I remember correctly.
Right. That's correct.
So that means that there's not going to be a committee? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm just saying that was a committee. We had too many committees at the time, so that kind of got part of the curriculum. So that is still happening within the curriculum meetings, I would imagine that's where it's.
That's
Yeah,
Jim.
that would be me.
Okay.
So we can bring that up, and I could ask Barry to give a presentation on that.
That would be great. Yeah, I'd like to hear about what's going on in that. Thank you.
It's a great idea. Thank you.
I'm going to add a note about that right now.
I do agree with you about the importance of trade, and I think it's critical to the country, our kids. And is it crazy to think about perhaps a prerequisite to working with our region doing work for us, having the attribute of an internship program? You want to do work for us, you need to have an internship program. You got to check that box off, because I think there's a lot of hardworking trade companies out there that care about the kids, and some that don't. And I think that's something maybe we could look at.
And I do think the problem with our communities in this area is that everybody just pushes kids into college.
They do.
College.
And that's what I
college.
heard when I was at the session.
And I do think it's essential for them to realize that there's a lot of honor in going into the military and going into the trades and, helping out, supporting families. There's so many other things that these kids are doing, and I do agree with you. Kids feel like they're not successful if, the first question when the kids graduate is, "Oh, where are you going to college?" And it's like,
Well, it's when they do the PFA fashion show, right, for the seniors. And I don't know if they still do it. I guess I'll find out in a couple of years, but they announce where the kid's going to college. How does that make a student feel that's not going anywhere? Or maybe is going into trade but doesn't want to say anything? Some of these folks that were there, Eastwick and Bergen Community, I asked them, do you come into schools, and set up a table? And he said, well, we have, but kind of doesn't go anywhere because the kids see us and they kind of veer away from us because they don't want anybody knowing that they're going to be talking to us. So there's definitely this stigma attached to it, which I kind of want to help remove.
Maybe an independent night where it's you coming if you're interested, rather than doing it in front of people who.
Yeah, kind of
Yeah.
like what you were talking about. Yeah, yeah.
So
Mrs.
I-
Lucy, you're talking about our vendors? Yeah. Okay.
So I do think it's an important conversation for us to continue to have. I think like we've tried to start it, but it really hasn't gone anywhere. I'd referenced last meeting where we, when Tammy was finishing up her tenure, we had talked about a board or district goal specific to the trades. Nothing ever materialized out of that. I know I've had some inquiries about like what our elective program looks like with the Pascack period, and I know a big selling point of the new schedule when it was presented to us was to increase student participation in electives. So I'm curious to know, one, from an elective standpoint, what percentage of students were taking electives prior to the new schedule and now after, and how has that trend changed, and how do electives promote the trades, and if there's opportunity to grow in that area, and then what percentage of our students who participate in the internship program are participating in programs specific to trades versus college and career readiness. So I think it's an important conversation. You know, we are at the end of a year getting ready for a new year, so I would hope that we would consider writing a goal specific to this topic, and if it needs a committee of its own, I would definitely be supportive of that.
I want to talk about the exam situation. When I first started teaching, I was teaching in New York City. New York City has regions, and everything was towards the regions. I can understand the concern about exams being like a regions kind of thing or something like that, where everybody's push towards that idea. But I don't believe that's where we are. I believe that we are in the process of moving the ball. We are trying to find the middle ground. I know AP courses, and I'm going to go back to that again, but they do provide a lot of information about the AP exam. So it's all there presented to the students from the beginning of the year. They know what their expectations are. There's that aspect of it. How prepared are they before they get to a final exam? So, you know, there's a lot of considerations in this, and it's a developing process. I think exams are necessary for preparation, but I know some people view exams as perspiration. So we want to find the balance here between preparing and not having them perspire or sweat it over these things as well. And so I'm confident that we will find that ground. I'm confident that, you know, we will do the best for our students.
So I appreciate that perspective. I guess my question would be like, preparation for what? I think Mr. Fox made a good point where like, you're right, you don't take a 10-month final in college, right? And, you know, I've worked at the college level and going back, like, it's, I think high school exams, finals can be a little more demanding than what you might find at the college level.
Well, if you take an AP course,
I'm
an
not
AP
talking
exam,
I'm just looking at the whole picture.
right? But it is a year course, and that exam represents a semester of credit. So a final exam, if prepared the right way, would yield results of you know, preparing the student for a semester of college.
I don't think we're just talking about AP, we're talking about all of our classes.
Well, I know, but I'm saying if we recognize that model as a standard, okay, whereas an AP course runs a year, you get the AP exam, that's a half a year of college. So there really are no 10-month final exams, in a sense. Even though it's 10 months, the content area is the equivalent to a semester of college.
See, I kind of disagree with that. I know what you're trying to say, but in college, they go to a class maybe 3 hours a week, and they're going there for 3.5 months, and then they're taking a test on that material. Here, they're going 5 days a week to a class. They're doing it for 10 months, and now they're being asked to remember what they've done in September. And I think that that's something they're never going to see again unless they take like, you know, some major bar exam but like through college, like the next 4 years, they're not going to see anything that's going to ask them to pull back something they did 10 months ago.
Well, the thing is, you revisit those themes throughout the year.
Depends on the class, and I think that's what they're arguing. That's not happening.
Right. Well, this is the thing. This is how we're moving the ball. We're assessing it. We're analyzing it. Hey, we're not perfect, but we're going to work through it. We're going to get to the point where I think it would have the best.
I just think it's funny right now because like I'm starting to look at colleges, right? My kid's a junior. And so we did the Florida circuit in January. And we went to schools that he's got no chance to get into, and we went to other schools that he's interested in. So we like go to the University of Florida. And if I remember the numbers right, I mean, he's not getting into University of Florida. But it's fine. He knows he's told me he's not getting in there. But I say that because it's like the requirements to get in there are significant. And their retention rate for freshmen is 96%. And the tour guides who are students are bragging about this, and they're like, yeah, like freshman year, you start off and you go and your classes are like 200-300 kid lectures, and nobody even really goes because you can access the stuff online, and then, you're doing group projects, and they're talking about the workload. I'm like, this is University of Florida, and kids aren't going to class. And these are the academic requirements for completing the courses, and that's why you have a 96% retention rate. And then over the years, your class sizes are smaller. Now I'm sure that's not every program at University of Florida, right? But I just use that as an example of like, you start to see what college is like for different programs and different kids. And I don't know, like I think the college experience, depending on the program and the student, may be different in a lot of ways than what's expected in the high school experience, which isn't as varied, where the expectations may be similar for all, whereas in college, the expectations are different for all, depending on the program you're in. And then there are those kids who aren't going to college, who are in the trades, who are like, who maybe need that more, would benefit from that personal touch that Mr. Fox was talking about with those extra days of instruction. So it's a big conversation. I know you guys are having it at the curriculum level. So it sounds like more work needs to be done to get us to the place where we need to be.
And I just want to say, the variation of colleges and expectations, right? We're seeing it here. We're seeing it played out here, the variations of expectations, what we want as far as finals or, non-finals and everything else. So we're trying to figure out all those variations. We're trying to get the data on all those things. And I've got to say, every school is moving towards one direction or the other. And what they're trying to do is figure out colleges as well, because colleges are in flux, as you know. Some colleges different from when I was at college, totally different. Online courses and everything else.
It's all a game.
Yeah.
I think we have a lot of questions that we need to work through, and once we get through all of it, a lot of the issues presented, I think if we have all the data in front of us, then we can come to an informed decision and discuss it moving forward.
No, I appreciate all of that. I just made notes. the discussion that we just had as well. I think, the other thing that has struck me is that there's a lot of data to support conceptually doing midterms and finals. But the reason that this comes up here, and if you look in the newspaper, this is coming up in districts across the state. High-performing districts across the state are having these conversations. And I think the reason that it continues to come up is that there's not a clear answer that applies to every district in every scenario. And I think that that's one of the things that we're trying to also balance here is we want to make sure that the solution that we come up with is right for our students and is going to help our students have the most success. The other thing that we'll make sure that we do is clarify some of the numerical data. We'll make sure that's part of our next presentation about this. Specifically, how many courses are running a 10-month cumulative exam, the data on the percent impact, the data. I know I shared, Ms. Graziano had shared as a chart for midterms. We'll get a similar chart for math to you, both for midterms and finals, so that you guys can see that in black and white. I think that's helpful. And then also we'll look at the data on the overall GPA impact, and that's raw data that we'll share with you when we have it as well. And then some of the other questions I think are a little bit more nuanced and aren't going to be answered with singular data sets, and that's the idea of study guides. How well attended were our extra help sessions? We offered additional learning lab periods at the end of the year. We're offering additional learning lab periods throughout the year next year, and that's something that we want to continuously analyze and look at the impact of that as well, because as we've kind of adjusted, we've continuously tried to meet student needs better and better. So next year, for the first time, we're going to have a science lab throughout the year. We're going to continue with the math and English labs, math and writing labs, and continue to kind of analyze that feedback. The other thing, I just made a note of this, and you'll see it reflected in our Friday updates, is to add to our next curriculum committee meeting a conversation about career and tech ed, specifically looking at electives and internship. And we have, the people who are kind of in charge of that are sitting here listening, so I'm sure that their wheels are spinning. I think that, and we'll share some of this data out with the full board. I think you're going to be pleased with some of the offerings that we've expanded over the last couple of years. I know that the first time I reviewed it last year, I was really impressed with our offerings. So, I think that's a great starting ground for us to look at. And then I think our conversation can kind of go from there. But I'll make sure that everybody kind of has that and we run that through the next curriculum committee meeting. So I appreciate all of those comments and questions, and that's helpful for us to figure out exactly what to kind of target to bring to you information-wise. So thank you for that.
I've got one more thing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I just want to make sure that, we do these impact. That impact doesn't mean necessarily stop. Okay? It may mean modify.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it does more than anything else. I think absolutes on either end, when we do that, there's consequences for that. Math may be a different animal than science. Social studies may be different than English. How we midterm, how we final, do we quarterlies? It may just be a thing that we see in the way it's taught. So, all right.
I appreciate that.
One more thing too. I just want to know, just in talking to some of my daughter's friends or whatever, good students performing well during the year, and then they fail a final or a midterm. And do you know what kind of impact that has on these kids? They're doing fine during the school year, and then all of a sudden it's like, I just bombed that test. Bombed. It's devastating. So there's that too. There's that impact, that mental, whoa, I just got crushed. I would like to see numbers on that too. And again, I think that goes back to my course evals, all those things that we talked about, where these kids can say something and they have a voice. And it's not one-on-one with the teacher or it's anonymous. I just want to let you know, I have something to say,
I appreciate that.
Well, and to Ms. Steffen's point, I think their perception is their reality. When you hear from a student,
like you said, and you talk to kids, which were at that point because they're young adults. And it's like, well, how did you do? Well, I got a 66, but everybody bombed it. And so, whether that's true or not, I don't know, but that's like the perception that's out there, that everybody bombed it. And then the thinking is, well, now everybody's grade suffers, and so do you look at that and like, is it being curved? I don't know. I don't know, but everybody back there knows. So I guess getting facts out, because it doesn't seem to be, we don't seem to be in a place right now where everybody's working off the same information. And I think once we can get to that place, it would be helpful, because the kids have questions, right? And they're starting to voice their concerns, which I think is a great thing. So look forward to continuing this work.
I'm not an educator, so I'm over my head, but I'd be curious, what is a typical root cause of a really good student throughout the year? As you said, bombing and test. Is it preparation or is it nerves? It's got to be one of the two. If everybody gets a 66, that's fine. You know, some people got a 68, some people get a 62. But I'm just concerned about, because when you get into the work world, the preparation is part of what makes you successful. And I think we got to be careful. And I think, Jim, you're right. The modifications, you know, going one way or the other is dangerous here. Yeah. But I'm really interested in what's causing that.
It's great questions. Thank you.
Okay. Also, too, there's the student factor, but then it's like, what's the realistic expectation of the assignment that you've been given? Like, so if everybody's not performing well on it, was that assessment a true reflection of what everybody should be being asked, right? Like, if everybody's not doing well on it, like if you and your work and everybody who you supervise are not performing well with a task, is it the people who are being asked to perform the task, or do you have to reflect on what you're asking your people to do and then be able to adjust it accordingly so that they can, so it better reflects like their skill set and the information that they've been taught, and what they've been exposed to, right? So there's that piece too.
I think there's more questions than
Yeah.
answers right now.
Are we still on old business? All right, so just a question, because I know it was in the Friday update, and then I had asked a clarifying question. The athletic appointments aren't going to be on until July 17th. So if they're not going to be approved until July 17th, how are coaches able to work with the athletes from July 1st to July 17th?
So what we had established in the past that we're continuing with is that coaches and assistant coaches who were previously approved for the program for the prior year are going to see those programs through until those appointments are made. So if a head coach is stepping down, it would be one of the assistant coaches that move it forward, to clarify that specific question.
Is that just a district practice, or is that grounded in like legal personnel language?
Yeah, we checked with the attorney last year, and he felt that that was acceptable. What we're trying to do is move the district practice to have those appointments be made earlier in the school year. We've been incrementally moving it earlier, so our goal would be to move it to May or June for next year. Because I think it's cleaner to do it that way, but I don't think it's inappropriate or out of line to continue with the program as they were previously appointed, and then those coaches move forward the summer practices.
Any other old business? On to new business, I have something. It's about the open board seats So there's a press release. It's going to be out on our website. It might even be on our website now. We also asked Pascack Press to put it in as a press release. But there are 3 vacancies, one in Hillsdale, one in Montvale, and one in Rivervale. And that will be for the November 5th election. The deadline to submit the nominating petition is 4 p.m. Monday, July 29th. And you'll get all this information on the New Jersey School Board's website. They have a board candidate kit. There you'll get all the information there, and there'll be a nominating petition. You need to submit that to the county clerk, the Bergen County County Clerk. That's, like I said, the deadline to submit is Monday, July 29th, to get on the ballot for November 5th. So please, I know some of you are having your terms expiring, so if you're interested in running again, please get that done. And then anyone in the public, if you're interested in running for the school board and you're from one of those 3 towns, please visit that website and you can pick it up. It will also be on our website. There'll be a link to be able to get to the nominating petition through school boards. Any other new business? No? Okay, we have comments from the public. This is the second piece. Citizens are invited to make comments and are limited to 3 minutes according to the Pascack Valley Regional High School District Board of Education Policy, number 0167. Persons wishing to speak must, upon being recognized, rise, sign in, and state their name and town of residence.
Hi, my name is Christy Lucia Germain. I'm from Hillsdale. I am here tonight to, I don't know, get more information or understand better. I have 3 children. My 6-year-old twins are autistic nonverbal, attend the Valley program and out-of-district placement. They've also been receiving services in our home from the Pascack Valley Council for Special Education Region 2. Since they were 3, and it's been a wonderful experience. It's helped bridge the gap. We've had some wonderful people. There's been some changes, and unfortunately, extended school year only goes through July, so August, in the previous years, we had ABA therapy and speech therapy through Region 2, and now that is not happening because the region is closed, so they're not providing services during those 2 weeks. And from my understanding, during any breaks at the school are closed. I'm sure some of you are familiar with autism and the regression that can occur in one day, in a weekend, a week, let alone the 5 weeks that the school is closed. It's detrimental to my children. It's detrimental to my household. The problem being that this is the past practice, is that I've had services in August, I've had services over the holidays, the breaks, and now it's changed. No written notice to my knowledge. Even to my therapist, she was very unaware of the change because we were making a summer schedule. I had requested speech, and the speech is from another company, so they're able to get speech for 5 weeks, but not the ABA therapy through the region. So my question is, when was that change made? Was it voted on here at a board meeting? Were the therapists that we use even notified? Were parents notified? Because when I went for my parent training to receive the services, you get a form you signed, and it says that arrangements can be made with the therapist to work any hours, any days, as long as it's okay with them. So that's my issue here. You know, I can't, if you're changing a practice, that's, I guess, the way it is. I can't fight that, but there was no information given out. There was a change made. You know, some of the solutions given to me were called Perform Care, which is a state assistance, which It's June. I needed to do that in February. Find a private provider. Sure, at $50 a pop a copay times 2 kids times the 5 weeks in the summer. You know, again, anything for my kids, and it's something I will have to plan for next year. But I'm just confused as to what's happening with the program and why services are being taken away from the population that needs them the most. You know, my kids regress in a weekend. So 5 weeks in August, you know, I'm already paying for childcare, and now I have to figure out how they don't regress come September. So I don't know what the next step is here. This whole meeting's been very enlightening for me. So I don't know if you're able to answer my questions or what the next step is, but I don't understand what's happening. And I know my superintendent talked to you, Ms. Bellotti. You did touch base, but it's just, why? And why is, this is going to come out maybe inappropriately, and I apologize, the interim person in charge of this program making that decision that now all of a sudden we can't have these services during this time period.
Sure. So Ms. McCabe is sitting over here. If you would give her your contact information, we'll have someone from Region 2 reach out to you to work this out for you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the public? Seeing none, we'll close. We're going to be entering into executive session now. This is on a personnel matter, and
Probably, yeah, maybe 5 to 10 minutes with action will be taken after.
so we'll be coming back in public and taking action.
Thank you, administrative team. I appreciate your presentation, and I appreciate you sticking around.
We are back in open session. We will not be taking any action, so I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
By acclamation, there are no objections, correct? We're done. Thank you.
Thank you.